In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, where stars burned with an intensity that could blind lesser beings, the planet Xylora stood as a fortress of defiance against the encroachment of human expansion. The atmosphere shimmered with an iridescent glow, a natural barrier that had protected its inhabitants for millennia. Here, amidst crystalline structures that rose like frozen waterfalls from the alien landscape, ruled Queen Xyrael, a being whose very presence commanded both reverence and terror. Xyrael's six-limbed form moved with predatory grace through the obsidian halls of her palace, her bioluminescent patterns shifting between angry crimson and warning gold. For centuries, she had watched as humanity spread across the galaxy like a virus, consuming resources and destroying ancient civilizations in their wake. Her people, the Xylorans, had witnessed the devastation firsthand when human corporations attempted to mine their sacred crystal forests. The Queen's hatred for these invaders burned brighter than the twin suns that bathed her world in perpetual twilight. The war had been raging for 23 Earth years, though to the long-lived Xylorans, it felt like mere moments. Human forces, armed with technology they barely understood, clashed against the naturally evolved defenses of the Xyloran warriors. Xyrael herself had led many battles, her psychic abilities capable of shattering human minds with a mere thought. Yet despite their technological superiority, the humans kept coming, wave after relentless wave, driven by what she perceived as insatiable greed. Her chamber walls were adorned with captured human artifacts, metals, weapons, fragments of ships, each piece a testament to her victories. But they also served as a constant reminder of the enemy she despised. The humans' ability to adapt and overcome obstacles infuriated her, even as she grudgingly acknowledged their tenacity. They lacked the elegance of her species, the deep connection to their environment, but they possessed something equally dangerous: determination. Through the great observation window of her throne room, Xyrael watched another human fleet approach her world. Their ships, angular and harsh compared to the flowing lines of Xyloran vessels, bristled with weapons. She extended her sensory tendrils into the void, tasting the electromagnetic signatures of their engines, feeling the aggression radiating from their crews. Her mandibles clicked in anticipation of the battle to come, yet beneath her rage lay a growing unease, a subtle shift in the pattern of human attacks that suggested they were learning, evolving their strategies in ways that threatened even her carefully constructed defenses. The assault began without warning, human fighters streaking through Xylora's upper atmosphere like meteors determined to burn themselves out rather than retreat. Xyrael's warriors responded instantly, their crystalline weapons resonating at frequencies that shattered human shields and hulls alike. The Queen herself descended to the battlefield, her psychic scream crippling entire squadrons before they could fire a single shot. Yet this time, something was different. Among the chaos of exploding ships and dying soldiers, one human fighter moved with impossible precision. Its movements defied the predictable patterns of previous encounters, weaving through defensive fire with a fluidity that seemed almost organic. Xyrael focused her attention on this anomaly, her multiple eyes tracking its every move. The craft dove toward her position, not in attack but in a calculated maneuver that brought it directly above the royal citadel. What happened next would forever alter the course of their conflict. The fighter's canopy opened, revealing its pilot, a male human soldier unlike any she had encountered before. His features were obscured by his helmet, but his posture spoke of controlled power rather than fear. As he ejected from his craft, his descent slowed by some primitive parachute system, Xyrael felt something stir within her, an unfamiliar sensation that made her bioluminescent patterns flicker erratically. The human landed gracefully on the crystalline platform before her throne, releasing his chute and standing tall. He removed his helmet, revealing features that, while alien, held a symmetry that triggered something deep within Xyrael's consciousness. His eyes, a striking shade of blue that reminded her of Xylora's rare morning skies, locked onto hers with an intensity that momentarily short-circuited her psychic defenses. For the first time in her long life, the Queen found herself unable to immediately crush an opponent's mind. The assembled Xyloran warriors raised their weapons, awaiting their Queen's command to eliminate this bold intruder. But Xyrael remained frozen, her usually decisive nature paralyzed by this unexpected reaction. The human, instead of displaying fear or aggression, placed his hands behind his back and inclined his head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. His voice, transmitted through some primitive translation device, emerged in broken but understandable Xyloran, "I seek understanding." The word struck Xyrael like a physical blow. Understanding?
from a human.
Her centuries-old convictions about their species wavered as she studied him more closely. His uniform, though battered from combat, bore no rank insignia beyond a single silver bar. His face showed signs of recent injury, yet he carried himself with dignity. Most disturbingly, she detected no trace of the usual human emotions: fear, anger, desperation, only calm determination. As moments stretched into what felt like eternity, Zirael became aware of the whispers of her courtiers, their confusion mirroring her own. This human should have been cowering before her might, begging for mercy or launching a futile attack. Instead, he stood there, regarding her with an expression that contained none of the arrogance she had come to expect from his kind. The longer she stared at him, the more her carefully constructed hatred began to crack, revealing questions she had never dared to ask about the true nature of humanity. The silence in the throne room grew heavier with each passing second, charged with unspoken possibilities. Zirael's bioluminescent markings pulsed erratically, betraying her internal conflict. The human male maintained his composed stance, his breathing steady and measured, as if he had all the time in the universe. Around them, Xyloran warriors shifted uneasily, their crystalline weapons humming with contained energy, waiting for their queen's command to strike down this insolent invader. Yet Zirael found herself unable to give that order. Something about this human's presence challenged everything she believed about his species. Her psychic tendrils, normally so adept at probing minds and crushing wills, recoiled from his consciousness as if encountering an unfamiliar force field. Where she expected to find the chaotic jumble of emotions characteristic of humans, fear, hatred, aggression, she instead sensed a disciplined mental construct, orderly and focused. It was as if he had anticipated her psychic probe and erected barriers specifically designed to resist her. The human's eyes, those disconcertingly clear blue eyes, continued to hold her gaze. Zirael realized with growing unease that she couldn't accurately gauge his age. His features suggested youth, yet the way he carried himself spoke of experience far beyond his apparent years. A peculiar scar ran along his jawline, evidence of past battles, but it didn't detract from his overall appearance. If anything, it added to the impression of a warrior who had faced death and emerged stronger. "What is your purpose here?" Zirael finally demanded, her voice resonating through the chamber with enhanced volume. The translation device crackled as it processed her words, but the human seemed to understand her intent perfectly well. His lips curved slightly upward in what she recognized as a human smile, a gesture she had always associated with arrogance or deceit. But now, seeing it directed at her, she felt an unexpected warmth spread through her thoracic cavity. "I am called Ambassador," the human replied, his pronunciation careful but deliberate. "Not warrior. Not invader." He paused, reaching into a pouch on his uniform and withdrawing a small crystalline object. Zirael's primary limbs twitched involuntarily. The crystal resembled those from Xylora's sacred forest, yet it pulsed with a familiar energy signature that matched human technology. "This bridge between us." The implications of his words sent ripples through the gathered Xylorans. An ambassador? After all these years of war? Zirael's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense thought processing. She examined the crystal more closely with her psychic senses, detecting layers of encoded information within its structure. Information about human culture, history, intentions. But more importantly, she sensed traces of genuine attempts at understanding, not just of Xyloran technology, but of their society, their values, their very essence. The human took a step forward, causing several Xyloran guards to raise their weapons. Zirael raised a restraining limb, silencing their implicit protest. "You invade our space," she countered, her voice laced with centuries of justified anger. "You destroy our worlds. You call this understanding." The human's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Mistakes," he acknowledged, bowing his head slightly. "Made by some. Not all. I represent New Path." He gestured toward the crystal still resting in his palm. "Proof of change." Zirael's secondary set of eyes focused on the crystal, analyzing its composition and origin. To her astonishment, she recognized elements from both human and Xyloran technology, a fusion that should have been impossible given the fundamental differences between their scientific approaches. The human had somehow managed to create a hybrid device that respected both cultures' principles, demonstrating an understanding of Xyloran sensitivities that no other human had ever shown. "You risk much," Zirael observed, her voice softer now. "Coming here alone. Unarmed." She emphasized this last word, noting the absence of any conventional weapons on his person. Even his uniform lacked the telltale bulges of hidden armaments. "Risk," the human repeated, tilting his head slightly. "Worth taking. For peace." He took another careful step forward, holding the crystal higher. "Your people deserve truth, not war." The Queen's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a contemplative violet hue. She had spent lifetimes preparing for this moment, rehearsing how she would crush the human negotiator who would inevitably arrive one day. But this was something entirely different. The human's presence wasn't just a diplomatic gesture, it was a profound statement about the possibility of coexistence. His very existence challenged everything she thought she knew about humanity. As Zirael continued to study the human ambassador, memories of past encounters flooded her consciousness. She recalled the first human ship that had entered Xyloran space, its crew broadcasting messages of peace while their scanners stripped away centuries of technological secrets. She remembered the mining operations that had devastated 3 of her colony worlds, leaving behind barren wastelands where once vibrant ecosystems had thrived. Each memory fueled her skepticism, yet the human before her remained calm, patient, as if understanding the storm of emotions raging within her. "Show me," she commanded suddenly, extending one of her delicate upper limbs toward the crystal. The human hesitated for the briefest moment, then carefully placed the device into her grasp. As their fingers brushed, his gloved hand against her sensitive digits, a jolt of pure energy passed between them. Zirael gasped, her psychic senses overwhelmed by a flood of images and emotions that weren't her own. Through the crystal's interface, she experienced human history not as cold data, but as living memories. Their struggles for survival on a hostile homeworld, their desperate reach for the stars, their capacity for both destruction and creation. The human ambassador watched her reaction with careful attention, his body language relaxed but alert. "Truth," he said softly. "Not filtered. Not propaganda." His choice of words, learned from human political systems, resonated deeply with Zirael's own experiences of deception and manipulation throughout the war. She probed deeper into the crystal's contents, discovering something that made her multiple hearts skip a beat. Embedded within the data streams were records of human dissent against the war, documents showing factions within their own government that had opposed the invasion of Xyloran space. There were transcripts of secret meetings, encrypted communications between peace advocates, even video footage of human protests against the military actions, all authentic, all verifiable through her psychic abilities. "Why show me this?" Zirael demanded, her voice trembling with conflicting emotions. "Why reveal your weaknesses?" The human's response came without hesitation. "Because peace, real peace, requires trust, requires vulnerability." He gestured toward the gathered Xyloran courtiers. "Your people deserve truth. All sides. Good and bad." Zirael's lower limbs trembled slightly as she processed this revelation. The human wasn't just offering terms for surrender or ceasefire. He was presenting an opportunity for genuine understanding. Through the crystal, she could see the faces of human scientists who had tried to warn their government about the ecological consequences of invading Xyloran space. She witnessed recordings of military officers resigning their commissions rather than participate in what they saw as unjust warfare. Most shockingly, she discovered evidence of covert operations where human agents had actually helped protect Xyloran refugees from their own advancing forces. The weight of this knowledge pressed heavily upon her. For centuries, she had painted all humans with the same brush of hatred, viewing them as a monolithic threat to her people's existence. Now, confronted with undeniable proof of division and dissent within their ranks, she felt the foundations of her worldview beginning to shift. The human ambassador hadn't come to negotiate from a position of strength, nor to offer empty apologies. He had arrived bearing the most powerful weapon of all, truth. "Your people," Zirael began, struggling to articulate her thoughts. "They are complex." She looked up from the crystal, meeting the human's steady gaze. "More complex than I believed." The ambassador nodded slowly. "As are yours," he replied. "War makes simple narratives easy enemies. But reality," he spread his hands wide, "much more complicated." In that moment, surrounded by centuries of accumulated hatred and prejudice, Zaira experienced something she had never allowed herself to feel before: doubt. Not about her people's right to defend their home, but about the absolute nature of her enmity toward humanity. The human ambassador hadn't just brought evidence of dissent within his own ranks. He had demonstrated a level of cultural sensitivity and strategic thinking that forced her to reconsider everything she thought she knew about his species. The human's next action caught everyone in the chamber by surprise. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up and removed his gloves, exposing his bare hands, a gesture of unprecedented vulnerability in the context of their species' relationship. Among Xylorans, such an act would be considered an intimate display of trust, akin to baring one's throat to a predator. Zairael's courtiers hissed in collective shock, some raising their weapons again in instinctive defense of their queen. But Zairael remained motionless, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to a soft amber hue. She recognized the significance of the gesture, even if the human himself might not fully understand its implications. By exposing his unprotected hands, he was effectively placing his life in her claws, literally and figuratively. Her predatory instincts screamed at her to strike, to end this threat once and for all. Yet her rational mind, honed by centuries of leadership, recognized the strategic brilliance of this move. "Ambassador," she said carefully, using the title with genuine curiosity for the first time. "You understand what you have done?" The human's expression softened into what she now recognized as a genuine smile, free of any trace of mockery or deception. "I understand," he confirmed. "Trust must be earned, not demanded." He spread his hands wider, palms facing upward in a universal gesture of openness. "If peace, truly desired, must start somewhere." The implications of his words reverberated through the chamber. This human wasn't just seeking a ceasefire or territorial compromise. He was proposing a fundamental restructuring of relations between their species. Through his actions, he was demonstrating that peace required mutual vulnerability, shared risks, and perhaps most difficult of all, the willingness to see one's enemy as something more than a simple threat. Zairael's mandibles clicked softly as she processed this revelation. The human's exposed hands, smooth and unmarked except for old scars, told their own story of battles fought and survived. She noticed the subtle calluses on his palms, evidence of physical labor rather than just combat training. His nails were neatly trimmed, suggesting discipline and attention to detail. These small details, insignificant to her warriors, spoke volumes to her about the man standing before her throne. "You place great faith in my restraint," she observed, her voice carrying a mixture of admiration and warning. "Why?" The human's response came without hesitation. "Because leader, true leader, recognizes opportunity when presented." He gestured toward the crystal still resting in her grasp. "You have choice. Continue war, or explore new path." The queen's primary eyes narrowed as she studied him more closely. Was this some elaborate psychological tactic? A clever manipulation designed to exploit her growing doubts about humanity's monolithic nature? Yet her psychic senses detected no deception, only the steady pulse of conviction and carefully controlled emotion. The human's heart rate remained remarkably stable, even as dozens of Xyloran weapons pointed in his direction. "You realize," Zairael said slowly, "that making this choice changes everything." She stepped closer, her upper limbs hovering near but not quite touching his exposed hands. "Not just between our peoples. Within my own court. Within your own government." The ambassador nodded gravely. "Change, necessary. Painful, but inevitable." He met her gaze directly. "Leadership means accepting responsibility for all consequences." Their proximity created an electric tension in the air, a mixture of ancient hatred and emerging possibility. Zairael's bioluminescent patterns shifted through the spectrum, reflecting the turmoil within her. Every instinct screamed at her to maintain the status quo, to preserve the purity of her people's resistance against human aggression. Yet the evidence in her hands, combined with a living example of peaceful intent standing before her, demanded consideration of alternatives she had never dared to imagine. The human's next words cut through her internal debate like a laser beam. War, easy choice. Peace, difficult. Worthwhile. He took a half step forward, reducing the distance between them to mere inches. Which do you choose, Queen Zyrael? In that moment, with her court watching in stunned silence, Zyrael realized she faced a decision that would reshape not just the immediate conflict, but potentially the entire future of interstellar relations. The human ambassador's presence represented more than just a diplomatic overture. It embodied the possibility of transcending generations of hatred and misunderstanding. Yet to embrace this opportunity would require her to challenge everything she had ever believed about leadership, loyalty, and the nature of conflict itself. As the tension in the throne room reached its peak, a sudden commotion erupted from the observation deck above. Several of Zyrael's elite guard rushed in, their bioluminescent warnings flashing urgent red. "My queen!" one of them exclaimed. "Human reinforcements approaching. Dozens of ships breaking through our outer defenses." The human ambassador's expression darkened, but not with the triumph Zyrael had expected. Instead, genuine concern flashed across his features. "Not part of agreement," he muttered under his breath, quickly activating a communication device on his wrist. His rapid exchange in human language revealed increasing distress as he listened to the incoming reports. Zyrael's instincts screamed betrayal, but her psychic senses still detected no deception from the ambassador. The situation unfolding before her defied all logical expectations. A human peace envoy caught between two opposing forces, both demanding allegiance. Her courtiers closed ranks around her, weapons ready to defend their queen against what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated trap. Yet the ambassador's reaction continued to confound her expectations. Instead of retreating to safety or calling for support from the approaching fleet, he stepped directly into the line of fire between the Zyloran warriors and the observation deck. His unprotected hands remained raised in a gesture of peace, but his body language conveyed absolute determination. "Stand down," he commanded in both human and halting Zyloran. "Both sides. Now." The transmission from his wrist device crackled loudly enough for all to hear. "This is Ambassador Kane to all units. Cease advance immediately. Repeat, cease advance. Unauthorized military action will be considered act of war against established diplomatic protocols." His voice carried authority that belied his apparent youth, and Zyrael detected genuine fear in the responses from his own command structure. A new voice broke through the chaos, female, commanding, and unmistakably human. "Ambassador Kane, this is General Sorensen. Stand aside. We have intelligence indicating Zyloran forces are preparing a counteroffensive. Your diplomatic mission is compromised." Kane's response came through clenched teeth. "General, you're operating on outdated information. The Queen and I were negotiating a potential ceasefire. Your intervention jeopardizes months of covert diplomatic efforts." He turned to face Zyrael directly, his expression a mixture of apology and resolve. "My queen, I swear on my honor. This was not authorized by my superiors." The gravity of the situation crystallized in Zyrael's mind. Before her stood a human who had apparently gone rogue to pursue peace, risking not only his life but his career and possibly his species' strategic advantage. The approaching fleet represented exactly the kind of aggressive human behavior she had always warned her people about. Yet here was living proof that not all humans marched in lockstep with their military machine. "Ambassador Kane," Zyrael said, stepping forward to stand beside him, much to the horror of her courtiers. "Your actions suggest complexity within your own command structure." She addressed her warriors. "Hold your fire. Let us see how this plays out." The human fleet's approach slowed noticeably, their formations hesitating at the edge of Zyloran space. Kane's communicator buzzed with increasingly frantic exchanges, but he maintained his position between the two forces. "General Sorensen," he broadcast clearly, "you have exactly 60 seconds to explain why you violated direct orders from the diplomatic corps before I transmit full documentation of this incident to the United Earth Senate." Zyrael watched, fascinated, as the human military hierarchy wrestled with this unprecedented situation. Here was a single individual, stripped of official protection and standing alone against both species' martial traditions, forcing a confrontation that could either ignite total war or forge an entirely new path forward. The ambassador's courage, or perhaps foolishness, in maintaining his position despite the mounting pressure revealed depths of character that challenged everything she thought she knew about human nature. The tense standoff stretched into minutes that felt like hours. Zirael's bioluminescent patterns shifted through various hues, reflecting her internal struggle to process the unfolding drama. Beside her, Ambassador Kane maintained his precarious position between two armies, his human physiology betraying signs of stress that would have been invisible to less observant beings. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, and his respiration rate increased, yet his stance remained unwavering. From the approaching human fleet, a single shuttle detached itself and began descending toward the royal citadel. Kane's communicator crackled with renewed urgency. "Ambassador, stand down immediately. This is Admiral Chen requesting your unconditional surrender to military authority." The voice carried the weight of command, yet lacked the absolute certainty of earlier transmissions. Kane's response demonstrated a level of diplomatic skill that impressed even Zirael's seasoned courtiers. "Admiral Chen, according to Article 37 of the United Earth Diplomatic Protocols, I am currently engaged in active negotiations with a sovereign power. Any attempt to interfere constitutes a violation of both military regulations and international law. Furthermore, Queen Zirael has extended her protection to me under Zyloran diplomatic immunity." The approaching shuttle slowed its descent, hovering uncertainly between the human fleet and the Zyloran stronghold. Zirael recognized the tactical brilliance of Kane's position. By placing himself under her protection, he had effectively linked the fate of both species' diplomatic futures. To harm him now would be to declare open war against humanity's official diplomatic channels, not just their military forces. "My queen," whispered her chief advisor, Commander Voxel, from behind her throne. "This human plays a dangerous game. He forces us to choose between supporting a rogue element or allowing our traditional enemies to dictate terms." Zirael's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "No, Vyxal. This human demonstrates something far more complex. He shows us that their species contains individuals capable of defying their own military-industrial complex. That their society, like ours, contains factions and divisions." She turned to address Kane directly. "Ambassador, explain to me why your own people would undermine their own peace efforts." Kane's shoulders sagged slightly, the first visible sign of fatigue. "Because change terrifies those who benefit from the status quo. The military-industrial sector has grown too dependent on this conflict. Peace threatens their power base." He activated his communicator again. "Admiral Chen, I have Queen Zirael's assurance that we were close to breakthrough negotiations. If you proceed with this intervention, you will be responsible for derailing humanity's best chance at ending this war." The silence that followed stretched taut across the void between the opposing forces. The human shuttle maintained its position, its running lights blinking in a pattern that suggested internal disagreement. Zirael's psychic senses detected heightened activity among the human command staff, debates raging across light years of space-time about the wisdom of continuing their unauthorized intervention. "This situation presents an interesting opportunity," Zirael mused aloud, her voice carrying through the tense atmosphere. "Rather than viewing this as a threat, perhaps we should consider it confirmation of Ambassador Kane's claims. His own people cannot maintain unity in their approach to us, just as we have struggled to maintain consensus among our own worlds." Kane turned to face her, his expression a mixture of gratitude and warning. "Exactly, my queen. Our species are more similar than either of us has wanted to admit. Both contain those who seek peace and those who profit from conflict." He addressed his communicator one final time. "Admiral Chen, I'm transmitting our negotiation logs now. If you proceed, you'll be acting against documented evidence of peaceful intent." The human shuttle began a slow retreat, its running lights dimming as it returned to the main fleet. The approaching ships maintained their positions but ceased all aggressive maneuvers. In the sudden quiet that followed, Zirael realized they had reached a critical juncture, not just in their current confrontation, but in the entire trajectory of Zyloran-human relations. The ambassador's gamble had paid off, but at what cost to his own career and credibility? For the first time, Zirael allowed herself to consider the possibility that peace might be achievable not through overwhelming force or superior technology, but through the courageous actions of individuals willing to challenge their own systems. The human standing beside her had just demonstrated that true diplomacy required more than just words and gestures. It demanded personal sacrifice and unwavering commitment to a vision of coexistence. As the immediate crisis subsided, a new awareness dawned on Zirael. The human ambassador's presence had catalyzed something within her court that went beyond simple diplomatic negotiations. Her warriors, who had spent generations fighting humans, now watched Cain with expressions ranging from cautious respect to outright fascination. The rigid boundaries of hatred and fear that had defined their species' relationship for centuries were cracking, revealing glimpses of common ground neither side had dared to acknowledge before. Commander Vyxal approached cautiously, his bioluminescent patterns signaling deep thought. "My queen, if I may speak freely. This human, he fights not with weapons, but with ideas. More dangerous than any fleet." The commander's admission carried the weight of someone confronting uncomfortable truths. He has shown us that their species contains elements as diverse as our own. Perhaps more so. Other courtiers began voicing similar observations, their tones mixing disbelief with reluctant admiration. Some recounted instances of human mercies during battles that had previously been dismissed as tactical errors or propaganda. Others mentioned intercepted communications suggesting divisions within human ranks that mirrored their own debates about the war's justification. The ambassador's actions had provided context for these anomalies, transforming them from isolated incidents into evidence of a larger pattern. Zirael's own perspective shifted as she processed these revelations. The human standing beside her throne represented not just a diplomatic initiative, but a fundamental challenge to Xyloran assumptions about their enemy. His willingness to defy his own command structure, to place himself in harm's way for the sake of dialogue, demonstrated qualities she had always believed unique to her own species: courage, sacrifice, and the pursuit of higher ideals. The realization struck her with the force of a supernova. Perhaps the greatest threat to peace hadn't been human aggression, but the Xylorans' own refusal to see nuance in their enemy. By painting all humans with the same brush of hatred, they had created a self-fulfilling prophecy of endless conflict. The ambassador's presence forced them to confront the possibility that peace required recognizing and engaging with those elements within humanity that sought understanding rather than domination. Cain, sensing the shift in atmosphere, addressed the gathered courtiers. "Your queen speaks truth. Change begins with seeing differently, with choosing to understand rather than simply react." His voice carried the authority of someone who had lived this philosophy, not just theorized about it. "We are more than our worst actions. Both our peoples." The chamber filled with murmurs as Xylorans processed this concept. For creatures who communicated primarily through psychic resonance and bioluminescent displays, the idea of looking beyond surface actions to perceive underlying motivations represented a profound paradigm shift. Zirael watched as her courtiers' patterns shifted through various hues, reflecting their internal struggles to reconcile long-held beliefs with new possibilities. "Weapons divide," Cain continued, gesturing toward the crystal still resting in Zirael's grasp. "Understanding connects. Your queen understands this. Will you?" He scanned the room, making eye contact with each Xyloran present. "Peace requires courage. From both sides." The impact of his words rippled through the assembly. Warriors who had spent lifetimes perfecting the art of combat found themselves contemplating the merits of dialogue. Scientists who had devoted their research to developing better weapons against humans now considered applying their expertise to building bridges instead. Even the most hardened veterans began acknowledging that their constant state of war had perhaps prevented them from seeing opportunities for resolution. Zirael recognized this moment for what it was, a turning point not just in their current negotiations, but in the entire trajectory of Xyloran civilization. The human ambassador had planted seeds of doubt about the inevitability of conflict, seeds that were already sprouting into new ways of thinking. His presence had forced them to confront the uncomfortable truth that maintaining hatred required less effort than pursuing understanding, but that the latter offered far greater rewards. As the court continued to process these revelations, Zirael made a decision that would shape the future of both species. She ordered the construction of a joint diplomatic compound on neutral territory, a space station designed using principles from both Xyloran and human architecture. The project would serve as a tangible symbol of their commitment to understanding, requiring both species to work together in unprecedented ways. Engineers from both sides would need to collaborate, sharing technological secrets and cultural insights to create a structure that honored both species' needs and values. The announcement sent shockwaves through both governments. Human corporate interests protested the sharing of advanced technology, while certain Xyloran factions argued that any cooperation with humans would contaminate their cultural purity. Yet the momentum generated by Kane's actions proved unstoppable. Groups that had previously worked in secret to promote peace emerged from the shadows, finding strength in numbers as public opinion shifted toward reconciliation. Kane himself became a lightning rod for controversy and hope. Within human space, his actions sparked heated debates about military accountability and diplomatic autonomy. Some viewed him as a traitor to his species, while others hailed him as a visionary who had dared to challenge the military-industrial complex. Despite facing numerous investigations and formal reprimands, his status as guest of honor in Xyloran territory gave him unprecedented leverage in shaping the new relationship between their peoples. The construction project itself became a microcosm of the larger challenges facing both species. Initial attempts at collaboration revealed deep-seated mistrust and cultural misunderstandings. Xyloran engineers struggled with human concepts of linear time and rigid schedules, while human teams found the Xyloran emphasis on psychic consensus building frustratingly inefficient. Yet these conflicts, when approached with patience and mutual respect, gradually transformed into opportunities for growth and understanding. Xyrael instituted regular exchange programs, sending Xyloran scholars to study human sociology and inviting human experts to learn about Xyloran psychic communication. These academic interactions often led to surprising discoveries. For instance, researchers found that certain human meditation techniques could help Xylorans regulate their bioluminescent expressions, while Xyloran psychic training methods showed promise in treating human neurological conditions. Perhaps most significantly, the project forced both species to confront their own internal divisions. Human peace activists gained new allies among reform-minded military officers, while Xyloran traditionalists found common cause with younger generations eager to break free from centuries of conflict. The diplomatic station became a crucible where these disparate elements could interact and evolve, sometimes painfully but always productively. Through it all, Kane maintained his position as a bridge between worlds, his presence serving as a constant reminder of the possibilities inherent in courage and understanding. His relationship with Queen Xyrael evolved into something neither had anticipated, a partnership based not on romance or politics, but on a shared vision of what their species could achieve together. Their daily interactions, observed by representatives from both sides, demonstrated that cooperation didn't require abandoning cultural identity but rather finding ways to honor both perspectives. As the framework of the diplomatic station took shape against the backdrop of Xyloran's twin suns, it became clear that this project represented more than just a physical structure. It embodied the hopes and fears of two species learning to see each other as complex entities rather than simple enemies. The challenges they faced together in its construction mirrored the larger obstacles they would need to overcome to build lasting peace. Obstacles that required not just technological solutions, but profound shifts in perception and understanding. The journey ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with setbacks and crises of faith, but the foundation laid during these early days of cooperation promised to transform the very nature of interspecies relations. What had begun with a single human's act of courage had blossomed into a movement that neither species could ignore or suppress. The question remained whether this fragile alliance could withstand the inevitable pressures from those who benefited from continued conflict, a question that would soon demand answers neither side was fully prepared to give.